being evidence-based is an important quality for anyone who wants to be a critical thinker. Again, critical thinking is not about being always like that, because there's a limit to the free time that we have to be critical thinker. So I'm not saying that you should always do that. I'm saying that on things that matter, on things that are important, on things that are close to your values, on things that are informing the decisions that you make, for example, to vote for someone or to follow someone, maybe it's important from time to time to be evidence-based. So I just want to give you a few elements on how to be evidence-based. So it's not always reading around a 150-page study. It's also good intellectual reflexes. There's been quite a lot of work on being evidence-based. Again, I'm not pushing my own theory here. I'm gathering different writings from authors, and I'll give you the name as I go along. But the main four qualities or practice that have to be in place, and then I'll unpack them, is learning the causalities. What comes first, what comes after that, and are they related? What is the cause and what is the consequence? Identify affecting variables. So what is influenced by other factors? And what are these variables and how do they affect? Do they increase or do they decrease the phenomenon? Seek evidence, look for the facts, look for the observation, look for the statistics, and then apply conclusions. Because if you just look at these things and then move on and keep doing what you used to do before, then you're not really being evidence-based, because you stayed at the point where it's not driving your decisions and your actions. In the field of management, it's been talked about by several authors. Some of the first ones who really put it in front of the debate were Jeffrey Pfeffer and Robert Sutton, two very important names to know, and they wrote very interesting things on power and organization. And they published first a paper and then several papers in a book. But the first title was quite telling, which is Management, Half-Truth and Nonsense, How to Practice Evidence-Based Management. The idea is that there were too many things happening in organizations, too many decisions, too many practices and best practices in organization and management that were not rooted in actual evidence, but very often on the assumption of managers. Oh, I think that people are motivated by this and that. Oh, I think that a good decision is based on that and that, without necessarily knowing what is the relevant variable. They have a very interesting table where they list the problematic practices and how to behave differently. A few of them that I think are interesting is the second one: glorify, celebrate, and apply breakthrough ideas and studies, and celebrate brilliant individuals like management gurus, thought leaders, and star performers. Basically, taking the outlier, taking the exception, and making it into a rule to apply is one thing that is very dangerous. Just because one person was one time successful doing something doesn't mean that it should become a rule for everyone. I'll give you an example of what I see here and there. Some people looked at the big tech CEOs in the big companies and say, oh, all of them dropped out of college. None of them finished university. They had an idea, they had a vision, and they went on to do it. Great, it worked for Bill Gates and it worked for Mark Zuckerberg. Great. Does that mean that everyone who has a big idea and vision and everyone who wants to become a big CEO and founder of a company should do that? Well, no, now you're generalizing a handful of cases to the rest. Doesn't mean that university is what you have to do, but it means that based on 3 examples, even successful ones, doesn't mean that you can reach a conclusion that is general. For the simple reason that I can find you quite a few homeless people that dropped out of university as well. So how many on one side, how many on the other, to balance it out? So their point is try to limit the generalization that that you make. You can see the bottom, not the bottom one, the one above that. Use success and failure stories about companies, teams, and people to uncover best and worst practices. Again, just because someone is successful doesn't mean that they did everything right. Maybe they were just lucky. Just because someone failed doesn't mean that they did everything wrong. Maybe they were just unlucky. If you look at people who are extremely successful in entrepreneurship and innovation over the past years, they are suspiciously all from the same part of the world, all from the same socioeconomic background, all from the same gender, and all from the same ethnicity. And there's something similar if you look at Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk. Maybe they were brilliant and had a vision, but maybe there are other things that were not based on their characteristic. Maybe there was something else that was at play. So we shouldn't overgeneralize these things. And on the right side of the table, Pfeffer and Sutton give a few good practices to follow. I particularly like the third one from the top: celebrate communities of smart people and collective brilliance, not lone geniuses and gurus. Very often behind a lot of successes, you have a collective of people, a lot of people. One of the things that Steve Jobs recognized in some interviews later in his career is that when he was young, he was too arrogant and thought that he was smarter than everyone else, so he couldn't delegate. And he says that he realized later in life that the goal was not to be smarter than everyone else. The goal was to find people that were better at specific things, so you could count on them to do it. So if you look at Apple, for example, there's something that makes me very, very sad. Apple is a great design company. They have products that everyone considers to be well designed, to be beautiful, to be elegant. And yet no one knows the name of the head designer of Apple. It was the same guy for years and years and years. We have 40 people in the room right now. Does anyone, without looking on Google, know the head of the name of the head of design at Apple? The poor guy. The poor guy who was the head of design is considered one of the best designing company in the world. His name is Jonathan Ive, I-V-E. He's very well recognized in the industry. He's not a sad poor person at home without any money. He's very successful. But see, everybody knows Steve Jobs, but no one knows the name of the head of design who was actually designing the product. Steve Jobs was not sculpting and drawing. He was delegating to someone who was better at it than him. So be careful with these stories where it's one person, almighty, all successful, that did everything and achieved the vision. We have to look for what's behind that. So that's a few healthy practices about being evidence-based. So to sum up with what I've said before about being practicing critical thinking, it means that you are careful about politics, in the sense that you acknowledge that things are political in nature and that they need to be deconstructed from a political perspective. You are aware of the effects of rhetorics, of how things are communicated to you and how you receive them. That you need to engage with complexity by looking at multiple frames, multiple perspective. And now another practice, you have to base your judgment and your decision and your analysis on evidence, on hard fact. So that's the fourth one. I'll add a fifth one later on to how to be critical.